Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I'm Michael Gracia. It's been a couple of weeks since I've had a show. Took a week or so off. Just needed some time away. To just kind of relax a bit. But I am back. I love doing this show, and for my first show back, I have a great guest, someone I've been wanting to talk to for a while now. I actually remember. I don't even know when it was, but it was sometime, I think, when I first started the show during the pandemic. He was watching, and I told him I want to have him on, but because of just how I booked and how I was so booked out so far, it just never got around to it till now. So I am thrilled to have a really talented cartoonist, the creator of the comic strip Next Door Neighbors. Here's Pat Sandy. Hey, Pat.
Hey, you start, Michael. Good evening. Yes.
Hey, how you doing?
Very good. Very good. It's a nice day
Thanks.
out. We've had
Oh,
good
yeah.
weather. Yeah.
Let me get to the right screen here. I always have three monitors, never know where my mouse is here. So I just want to say hi to Joe Ryan. Glad to have you back. Thank you for having me back. Thanks for tuning in. So for those who, Mike Wilkie is on.
Mr.
Hi, Mike.
Wilkie.
Hi, Pat. Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
Mike. Yeah.
Mike, he's been on the show too. Very talented gag man here. Love his comics. So before we get into, talking about like your work and, Next Door Neighbors and everything, can you tell us about yourself? Like what got you into comics or cartooning, whatever, whether, what it was? And
I don't know. I probably speak for so many of us when I say it was things like Mad Magazine and Peanuts.
oh,
When I was a kid. I mean, when I was a kid, everything was all about Peanuts and all the comic strips and stuff. One strip that I was particularly enamored of was a strip called Winthrop by Dick Cavally.
I think I know that one.
School. Oh yeah, you've seen this stuff
I know.
before. And
Yeah.
so beautiful, and strips like Lolly and certainly Blondie and Mort Walker's Crowd and all that.
Yeah.
So grew up with all that stuff, and then kind of graduated a little bit to Mad Magazine, which slightly warped things a little bit. And then then I got over to National Lampoon in junior high and all that kind of thing, and started checking out underground comics. We had it's funny, I was posting this the other day. We had a head shop in the neighborhood that I grew up in that sold comics, right? So I'm like 13 years old going in there and running into Robert Crumb at a fairly early age. And it was just, to say it was influential is probably an understatement. But between things like that and National Lampoon and all, I think the influence was sort of this chutney stew of all kinds of different cartoonists and such. And I have to throw in Marvel Comics. I was never a DC guy.
Okay.
So apologies to anybody.
No. Listen, I'll always say I'm a DC guy over Marvel, but I did read both growing up.
Oh my God, it was Marvel a go-go for me. And so I just kind of lived and breathed this stuff. And at the same time, when I was a kid, I was probably about 11 or so. We used to travel to Tulsa. I'm originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my grandmother was down there, and we would go down there on vacation. And she would let us stay up and watch late night TV. Well, here I am at 11 years old, maybe, and I started watching Johnny Carson.
Oh, okay.
And of all people at age 11. And so what I started doing, this is really sad because most guys my age were out playing baseball and crap, but and I love baseball. But I would sit there and I would take a tape recorder and I would record Johnny's monologues. Now these are in the summer, so he was probably doing reruns and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't reruns, it was somebody like Joey Bishop or whoever subbing. And what I would do is and I still have this notebook, I would take this taped monologue. This is very sad. And I would actually transcribe the jokes. I would transcribe the routines, the monologues into a notebook to save. And I don't know what I was saving it for, but I think as the years went on, I realized that at kind of like an early age, I was training myself, whether I knew it or not, but training myself to develop a rhythm to writing. It looks, when you read a gag in a cartoon, hand lettered and all that kind of stuff, it looks a lot different than it does if you read a gag, say, written out just real dryly. And you can see the rhythm, and you can see why certain words belong in a certain place and all that. And I probably learned it at that early age, but I still have this notebook and I laugh at it because the stuff, at age 11, I thought it was hilarious as anything. And I read it now and it's really, really not funny at all. But so at that time, I was just as all of us really were, I was a bit of a sponge. So, I mean, those embryonic years where you're just soaking everything in constantly had to have some kind of an impact. You have to have the same similar type.
I do. I didn't record in Johnny Carson, but I will say I recorded. First of all, I recorded a lot of cartoons when I was a kid. My goal was to grow up and be an animator, so I used to record every single cartoon, play them back, pause it, and learn to draw every character from the television.
Oh God, yeah.
And
over and over again.
Yeah, and I would just sit and copy the TV for hours, and I did that with newspaper strips too, because I always said, well, if I'm not going to be an animator, I'll be a syndicated cartoonist. Excuse me. So those two of the hardest, things you can do.
I mean, with the comic strips, what's really, you talk about the repetitive nature, and I totally get that. I mean, I was just thinking about this today. The comic strip Lolly, I think it was Pete Hansen or somebody like Pete Hasten. He drew Junior, the boss's kid, with a very strange hairstyle. It almost looked like a shoe print flat thing on his head. It was really bizarre. It was just these sort of verbal nomenclature, visual nomenclature that you would see some cartoonists use. And that stuff would fascinate me. Just the fact that you never saw Beetle's eyes in Beetle Bailey, unless his hat flipped up or something like that.
Yeah.
And I loved stuff like that. And I loved Dagwood's hair is another one. The way it's kind of down and kind of, hey, Clarence, and kind of goes out like that,
Yeah.
So that type of stuff at a young age really fascinated me. And by the time I got to National Lampoon, I was starting, it wasn't just the underground comics, but I think it was some of the cartoonists that were in that magazine, Vaughn Baudet and Charlie Rodriguez and stuff like that. And some of that stuff was kind of hardcore,
Yeah, I got into National Lampoon in high school. That's when I was first introduced. I was actually introduced to Mad Magazine in second grade. And because I know you mentioned Mad, and some of the Mad I didn't get at that age, but I loved the one thing I got, and the reason I purchased it was for Sergio's work. Sergio, to me, all-time favorite cartoonist. I got an original Gru piece up on my wall by him, and and I still will look at that stuff today just for him. But he was because of his pantomime strips, even at 8-9 years old, I was able to understand everything he was doing. And then I grew as I grew. Mad Magazine stayed with me for such a long time.
Well, the ones that really, and the other thing too is at the same time in the late 60s, at least for me in the late 60s, I started copping the paperbacks, the Mad paperbacks, right? The Mad Reader and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I got into, at that particular age, was able to really appreciate Will Elder and Wally Wood and Jack Davis and all these guys.
Yeah.
And Willie Elder, though, was the guy that I just went nuts over. So, his parodies of Archie, Starchy, Super Duper Man, all that kind of stuff just was the best stuff I'd ever read, really. Yeah. Particularly the Archie one. That one stuck with me my whole life. It was just so good. So, a lot of influences in that regard.
Oh, yeah. Mad was a huge influence for me, too. Yeah. I think I got to pick up some of the collection book, their book collections.
I love that stuff.
I have a couple.
Oh, yeah. And then, as the years go on, I think what ended up happening is I ended up go through high school and stuff. But by the time I got to college, suddenly it was editorial cartoons. That was really floating my boat. And, so I started getting into McNally and Peters and all these guys, Pat Oliphant and so on. And, I had a huge advantage as a kid that my mom used to work at the Akron Beacon Journal. And she was on the action line department. That's the kind of phone call-in type thing. And she knew the art team through a couple of the reporters and stuff. So somehow she wangled it so that I was able to go in there and meet all these guys. So, people like Chuck Ayers and Art Crummell and Denny Haas and all this, these guys were godlike to me at age 11. And I mean, I walked in there and I thought, wow, this was something else. And it was a huge, absolutely massive impact on me as a young man. And it stuck with me all the years through high school and all that. And I remember by the time I got to college, I just thought, man, this is something I've got to do one way or the other. And I went for graphic design, but I kind of stumbled into the editorial cartoons and started just doing them for the school paper, and it just stuck, and I became obsessed with it. So I think what ended up happening in those days is, what was I, probably about 20 years old, I trained myself because of the nature of newspapers to develop an idea. This was during the Iranian hostage crisis, that time period, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And I was able to train myself to do an idea each day and pitch it to my editor and have them go through the work and have sort of a back and forth, which I have to say, I tell this to students a lot, that type of holistic back and forth to talk about your work with somebody and sell it, to pitch it at a real early age, particularly in college, was really, really valuable for me. So I knew, at the dawning of cable TV, I found myself at age 19 or 20, whether I liked it or not, up at 6 a.m. in college, 21 or whatever, and trying to come up with, like say 5 to 8 ideas to pitch to a second person to sell it and then draw it by the end of the day. That was really amazing discipline to learn.
Yeah. So and that young too, I mean, especially in college, wanting to sleep, go out.
I did that too. Don't get me wrong. So that was a problem. I mean, I would find myself at, 6 a.m. There was no internet or anything. So you'd have to get up and go down and get your coffee and watch TV. And, but that, that turned into fairly nice situation at the school paper. But, newspapers being what they were, even in those days, were starting to kind of single out. I mean, cities that used to have 2 or 3 newspapers then became one. Yeah. And it was in that era that was starting to happen. And so I found myself kind of in a very unusual position where I was knocking at the door of a greeting card company in Cleveland called American Greetings. You've probably heard of them, Ziggy and Teddy Bears and all that. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I walked into those doors, very lucky young man, and could not believe the talent that I was surrounded by. It was like an osmosis thing. You just were just jazzed by it night and day.
That's awesome.
And suddenly everybody you're working with is some variation of a cartoonist or a humorous illustrator, or humorous illustrator, and you're just suddenly on fire constantly. It was very heady, 24 years old, and you're suddenly surrounded by all that. So I think that had a huge influence. Some amazing cartoonists and illustrators at a lot of those companies. Hallmark's the same way.
Yeah. So. That's amazing.
That's the road. That's sort of the path that kind of led me to the cartoon and stuff. So.
We got a comment here, and I don't know if it's for me or for you, because I mentioned, says, "Are you an animator or a cartoonist? What do you consider yourself?"
Oh, a cartoonist. Yeah. I'm not even consider myself an illustrator. At the end of the day, I'm lucky to just do the cartoons.
Yeah. So. I feel the same way. I'm a cartoonist. That's how I consider myself. But I animate too. I mean, I draw funny stuff and either make it move or just keep it flat. In case the question was for me, and they're asking, what's your strip called?
Next Door Neighbors. Here we go.
Next Door Neighbors. A little, yeah.
You got the prop right here.
Yeah, right there. Next Door Neighbors. And I got to say, we're going to get into it, but I know I've said it on the show before, but I love the looseness of your style that you got in there. And it's
I can't draw, man. No, I got to tell you, I say that, but it's simply because maybe I don't have this is such a weird admission. The drive to drill it down and make it super tight and illustrative and all that kind of thing. I think I'm somebody that spends ridiculous amounts of time trying to tweak the writing. I don't know. You must be familiar with that.
Yeah, but the writing is more important than the art. If you want to, I mean, you have to have a good joke. And I'm looking at one of your strips. I'm looking at today's strip right now, by the way, on Go Comics, you guys. I'm going to put a link right now in the comments. So where is it here? Hopefully after the show, don't leave the screen, you guys. You can check this out. But it's a great comic. It's funny that you were mentioning that about not liking to tie down the art. Sometimes I want to be looser, but I feel my work is too tight. because of a few reasons. One, you mentioned Mort Walker earlier. I was so influenced, like my work could look like that, very tight, but also my animation background of cleaning up and keeping the work, tight and clean. And I kind of, until I color it, it almost looks like a coloring book page.
Yeah.
My stuff.
Oh, that's nice though. I like that. Yeah.
But it's so time consuming.
Well, I went through my, again, and as everybody who's even tried to do a strip, everybody does dozens of them, and they're always trial and error and everything. But for me, and I've said this many times, my big holy trinity for comic strips is a little bit more historical as well. Obviously, it was Peanuts. I mean, I idolized Charles Schulz.
Yeah.
And then my mom, who was by all accounts sort of a very conservative William Buckley type. So she was from that end of things. She would not have liked today's atmosphere. But anyway, I digress. She says, she comes up to me one day. I was probably about 13, maybe pushing 14. And she says, there's a strip you ought to be reading. And I think you would love this comic strip. And she mentions Doonesbury.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. My mom, this arch conservative, comes up. She was very open-minded. She liked all kinds of points of view. So she throws out, Doonesbury. Well, this was like just after it became a fairly tight established strip, but the early days of that strip were very sketchy. And I love that look of this sort of this looseness. And I really got into that. And then, years later, there was Bloom County, which was kind of similar in that regard, both four strip type setups and stuff. And then the other one in the holy trinity, so to speak, for me was Farside.
Oh,
and I've never really been a panel guy at all, really, but Farside blew my mind, like it blew a lot of people's minds. I mean, I couldn't believe how fresh that panel was. And so those were the ones during those years, probably 70s into the 80s, that just kind of threw me aside and thought, wow, so above and beyond going into greeting cards and all that kind of stuff, it started gnawing at me. Why don't you try this type of thing after all these years? I never really tried a strip until about the late 80s, maybe, when I first took a crack at it. And a lot of them were rough.
Yeah.
And you go through the whole thing. I mean, I think everybody goes through this whole Senate to all the syndicates and all that kind of business.
No, it's
I got a lot of rejections,
Yeah, no, I have my rejection letters packed away, like I mentioned before we went on, and it happens, and these days, it's easier, I think. I mean, not to get syndicated, but to create your own strip and just get it out there with the internet. And speaking of someone who has done that, we got a comment saying, "Hello, gentlemen," to JD Calderon. He's got a, I don't know if it started, remind me in the comments, but he has a Kickstarter for his Tall Tales comic, and he's got a lot of stuff. We got, who's this? I don't know how to say your last name, but James, looking forward to the interview. Thank you. And Dylan asks, if you don't mind, what year were you born? Can you say that or not?
18. No. I'm 1959. I'm a geezer.
It's okay. We all are.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, the interesting thing too, and one thing I didn't really mention, is also around the late 80s, I started doing magazine cartoons.
Okay.
And magazines not flourishing in this day and age, I ran into a few buddies that had worked that field, most notably Bob Voitko and a few others. These guys are fantastic, and learned kind of how you start pitching magazines. And the field is vastly different today, but I kind of sold quite a few of them from the late 80s to probably the early aughts. And it's a tough field. So the reason I brought that up as well is because the level of rejections that you get in that field.
Yeah, I've
dump, I mean,
I tried a few. My you mentioned earlier you weren't really into single panels. That I feel is my knack of drawing. But these days it's a lot harder to sell and find places to sell them. And
I sold to Wall Street Journal quite a few times, Good Housekeeping, and a few of the established ones. But I think the Journal might be one of the very few that is still looking, and somebody can correct me if they wish, but that is still looking at hard copy tactile submissions. Like most of the time now, I think a lot of it is this electronic submission stuff.
Yeah, I've done that.
I'm not organized. I will never, ever tell you that I'm organized. So kind of toggling between digital submissions and postal and post stamps, postage and all that, just gives me a headache. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And the
Oswald.
Oswald Chronicles, both great stuff. I will say this, and JD, and I've mentioned this to him. I've been on his show, and I first met him. It might have been, I don't know if it was the first or second Comic-Con I went to. It was back in the mid '90s, and it was at my local mall. And he had his book there. And I bought all his books. So I'm like, here's a guy not much older than me, putting out comics, and I'm like, these look really nice. So all the stuff, Tall Tales, is something he put out back in the 90s, and he's revamping and adding, I think, recoloring and doing all this great stuff to it. But I still have the original in my boxes next to me below.
Awesome.
So,
well, I got to tell you, I mean, the advent of indie comics, which is what we're all kind of related to, this whole internet thing and everybody doing their own thing and Kickstarters and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the late 70s, at least the way I trace it, is you had Dave Sim of Cerebus fame and Love and Rockets and all this sort of indie stuff that came out.
Oh, yeah.
That had this sort of blazing originality to it. Look at that clean click. No, I'm not. Trust me. I cleaned this place up, for God's sake. No, but the advent of indie comics in the 80s and the whole blow up of distribution and all that kind of thing created this necessity for the singular creator that the internet, for good or bad, and I italicize for good or bad, kind of enabled the ability to be able to get your work out there and get seen. And 30 years ago, you got your rejection, and that was it, Daddy-O.
Yeah.
That was it. Nowadays, you just put it out there, So,
we got a comment from Mike, and I was going to get to this. He goes, "Can you talk about your tools of the trade?"
Oh my! Well, it's pretty simplistic, actually. It's this thing, which is discovered Love and Rockets. Yes, thank you. Yeah,
that is great. Yeah,
I got to tell you, I'm a. This is sad. I'm very funny about the so-called tools of the trade, and I can't. My wife will attest to this. I cannot function without these type of pens. They're just big pens with leads, 7 leads, right?
Yeah.
Have to have that. It's pathetic, actually. For a long time.
No, it's not, because I want to get something over. Keep talking. Keep talking.
Like that. And then I use to write. I go through just of field notes steno pads. Now, if you're familiar with these, I can't find one right now. This is a different.
I know
one.
Exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
like this, right? And I can't function writing unless I have those two things. And then when it comes to roughing everything up, I do everything on templates. Okay. Yeah. So I have template sheets. Let me see if I can pull one of these out. They look like this. I don't know if this makes any sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yes. So I use these, rough everything out super tight. Let's see if I have one. And then I take the Bristol boards and I lay them on a Huion light board and I just ink them in with a micron pen. So it's about that simple. Now, like I said, I think I was telling you offline here, I just got a Cintiq, so I'm going to try to bring the show over there. I've used a Wacom pad for years where you have to look at the screen and all that, and I learned how to do that. But I think the Cintiq is going to be a whole different ball game because I would like, just like a Procreate, I'd like to be able to just draw on and forget all the roughs and all that business. So
I got something funny to share though with you.
Go for it. Yeah.
So number one, when it comes to writing, although this isn't the exact pad, I can only write on yellow college ruled paper. This is wide ruled. I bought this by mistake. But college ruled paper, yellow pads is all I can write on for my comics.
I hear you. Yeah.
And speaking of pencils, this Pentel is if you want to call it my magic wand. I can only draw. I have a blue one that I keep with me wherever I go, but for some reason this black one is when I'm actually going when you're working. This is the one I use. It's the same pencil. One's just in blue, one's just in black, and this one right here.
And the thing is if I don't have one of these guys, I'm walking around the house in a daze looking for this frickin' pen, right?
Yeah,
it's really sad because somebody would say, well, there's a number 2 pencil over there, or there's this type of pencil or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm goofy enough, I can't do it like that.
I'm also superstitious that I don't let anyone touch the black one. It's just a
Black,
weird thing about it's this no one can touch this pencil. I
really?
freak out if anyone's using it. Let's go to the comments real quick
Yeah,
though. Dylan asks, "Do you love Disney animated films?" I don't know if he's talking to you or me, but my studio is filled with Disney. My whole house is filled with Disney. I am a Disney geek. I don't know about you.
I love animated films. I'm probably more on the older end of it. The Cinderella stuff and Lady.
Oh yeah, I prefer a lot of the older stuff too.
Yeah, I'm not a big CG guy. I will tell you that.
Yeah,
so.
I enjoy it on certain things, but I feel, and I think I talked about this on the air. Like there was a cartoon a few years back called Beware the Batman, and it was a 3D animated cartoon, and the art looked great. But this was my problem. Anytime, and I've only watched like an episode, and I'm turned off because they're spending so much time on the CG. It's like Batman was in Gotham City by himself. There was nothing going on in the background, no crowds, no people. It was like if they had to be there for the story, they were there. If not, it was just empty Gotham. And I'm like, I don't like that in TV.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, some animated stuff, and it's not necessarily Disney or whatever, but I mean, even some animation that you'll see like in old advertising really floats my boat. So I'll give you an example. One of the New Yorker cover artists for years, R.O. Bleckman, if anybody's familiar with him.
I think that sounds familiar to me.
He had a style that was very loose. I mean, I saw one of his originals once. I think it was Cartoonist Profiles magazine or something like that. Another very cool magazine if you can dig it up.
And, I have a couple.
Yeah, they're fantastic. But one of his originals was about 25 different pieces of tissue paper of this one little very simplistic character, all kind of like taped together. And I mean, it looked just like a horror scene. Everything was just kind of banged together. But it was I think it was his way of getting to this spontaneity. And I think spontaneity is maybe this goes back to one of your questions earlier before I digressed for 20 minutes.
It's okay.
The whole idea of spontaneity looks really easy. It's something I think we all kind of aspire to, sort of. Mm-hmm. And it's almost impossible because I think that the nature of a creative is to fiddle with stuff till you ruin it. That's how I'll put it. I'll sit there and I'll just knock the life out of something because I keep redrawing it over and over again.
Oh my God, yes.
Right. And so Bleckman stuff, to go back to the animation, what was interesting is I'd seen some of his work, and I wish I could remember what the product was, but it might have been a Christmas ad or something, but it was R.O. Bleckman's work animated, and the lines all kind of just vibrated because none of his lines kind of connect.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely stunning. I just love the look of something like that. So something like that really, really inspires me as opposed to some really elaborate 101 Dalmatians huge scene or whatever, That's just me.
No, I could appreciate that. Appreciate it. Yeah. Let's go to some more comments here. So James says Cintiqs are brilliant, sped things up big time. I agree. I love my Cintiq. Then he says, have you played around with the iPad Pro? It's nice mobile once in a while. I was saying even before I think we went on that I use my iPad Pro more than I use my Cintiq now these days.
Right.
And that's only because the weather is getting warmer and I want the air conditioning. I don't have air conditioning in my studio, but when I'm in my studio, my Cintiq's right in front of me. I'm looking down at your comic. It's my third monitor right now, but I love this thing.
With an iPad Pro, I Procreate, I have that going on in there, and obviously I'm getting the Cintiq and all that. But I think the overall concept of drawing literally tactily on a screen is something that is going to be my new world order, so to speak. But the Procreate itself, with any kind of a program, particularly one as elaborate as Procreate, which is, you might as well call it Photoshop. It's almost the same thing and even more intuitive in a way.
Yeah.
It's a learning curve. You got to sit down and you got to literally go back to basics. And I was just weaned on Photoshop. So this sort of yin and yang love-hate thing between Photoshop, Procreate, where do you go? Well, it's pretty easy because Photoshop is pricey,
Yeah.
So I can see why Procreate got caught on. So
But I will say this: just I'll be advertising it soon, but I am going to be putting something up on Gumroads for you guys to download. And they will be templates for comic strips that you can bring
Right.
into Procreate, bring into Photoshop, Clip Studio Paint. It was something I developed a couple of years ago that I have been using when I draw, and I've given it to my students and things. So it works out very well. So I think I just want to give it to you guys,
I've
and
seen
I'll
some
have that.
stunning artwork on Procreate. Stunning.
Yeah.
Not just not comic strips. I mean some incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh my God,
yeah,
it's amazing.
yeah. Never mind, but it's just it's.
Hmm.
I look at my stuff and I'm like, my God, my.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, yeah.
It's you always hate your, you know.
I will tell you, everything I do, I would redo if somebody gave me the opportunity. It's a
Yeah.
bad problem.
Yeah, it's. I think we all feel that way though. I'm one of those people. I've said this many times. I'll finish a piece of work and I'm like, this is great. I'm a genius. And then I go back, look at it 2 minutes later. There's a mistake. There's a mistake. There's a mistake.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I suck. You know, it's just.
I used to work with dudes where you would get done with a very elaborate design when I was
Yeah.
at the greeting card company, and it'd be like 5 panels, a full jungle scene or whatever. And then somebody would point out a mistake like right in the middle, or you make some kind of screw up and you have to go in. And in those days, I got to tell you, we used for the most part Luma dice, Martin's dice, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those aren't easy to fix, man. I mean,
Yeah.
think of how easy it is in this day and age. If you need to fix something, it's instantaneous.
It's funny when I did teaching or when I did graphic design or even when I was an art director, one of the things I've always had is a keen eye for detail. Like I can point out where like mistakes are, and especially using a program like Adobe Illustrator where things are vector, and if you don't get the point right, you have a little angle off.
Yeah.
You have a little point off. Number one, my students hated me for every little thing I found. I would just be circling their paper. But it's funny you say that because I don't know how this got by. I have a shirt now. I mentioned I'm a big Disney guy. Most of my T-shirts very Disney-esque. I got a Disney shirt, and I believe it's the symbol of the Mickey Mouse Club.
Nice.
And I got it. I didn't buy it myself. Someone bought it for me. But there's a line. You could tell it was retraced in Illustrator, and there's a little point off, and it drives me nuts every time.
I totally understand that.
And I don't wear it often because I know the mistake is on there.
And you're the only one that sees it, but
and I don't want to get rid of it because I love the design so much. But
my degree was graphic design. I don't know.
Mine was visual art, and I have a master's in studio art.
Okay. And in graphic design, I see everything real. Like I do a lot of caricature work for whatever reason. I'll see somebody and want to do it, and I used to do this sort of amusement park type caricature work.
Yeah.
We used to do it a lot at the company, and if there was a visiting executive or something, they would ask us to do a card. And I did a few celebrities and all that kind of stuff, but I really didn't like working like that because it was Winsor Newton 2 and it was Higgins Inc. and it was all live, and if you make a mistake, and but I kind of gravitated to the graphic end of it, and I like to be real reductive when doing that. So I like to, most of it's vector, but I mean I just go as simplistic as possible and see what I can get away with for the likeness. So so I like in vector as well.
Yeah, no, that's fun. I used to do that nonstop. I actually used to do comics in vector constantly.
Nice.
It was a lot more time consuming, but it was I liked the look. We got who is it here? Tim Jones.
Yeah.
Well, hello. Hey,
Welcome.
Tim, how you doing? Another great comic artist. One of my favorite strips.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I haven't had a chance to put it away since I saw him in November. This is how messy my studio is. And I got a copy of his books. I got another book in the pile, but this was on top.
Awesome.
The Sour Grape strip. And that's the back if you guys want. Where is it? sourgrapescomic.com.
There you
check
go.
all that out. He is this is a fun strip here. Love the art, love everything about it. He's got some good stuff.
On that book,
yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I love looking at his stuff.
Yeah.
And I got to get him back on the show.
Indeed. There you go.
Yeah, I always have a good time chatting with him. So let's see, where are we here? I'm just looking at the comments. Oh, we got a comment about animation. Just want to get to. The Arcane League of Legends offers 2D anime. I know the series. I'll say this. I tried watching an episode and it wasn't for me. But again, I'm more of a 2D guy than 3D guy. But I'm a big fantasy person. If you can't tell, my Lord of the Rings behind me, and I got my Frank Frazetta pieces behind me. Which way? Frazetta. Yeah. Frazetta's over there. I have a Frazetta on the wall there. I love my fantasy and sci-fi stuff here. And Tim,
I'm a huge EC guy, Michael. Huge EC guy here.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I'm not a huge horror fan, but like the EC horror stuff, I wasn't into. But like their weird, stories and their
Wally Wood stuff.
Yeah, all that. Like I have. I think I bought it from Comixology. I don't remember. It was from Amazon Prime. I think they work with Comixology. And I bought a digital copy of it, but I got like all Bollywood sci-fi.
Those were, I can tell you, we talk, there's the constant running debate nowadays in comics, if I may be bold, is, the difference between modern comics and some of this older stuff. And, the modern stuff is stunning to look at in a very technically virtuosity type of way, because it's just incredible to look at. There's very, very little dialogue, but you look at some of these old EC books, even the mid 60s Marvels and all that, they're so dense and copy and story driven. Some of it's real expository and all that kind of thing, and it's unnecessary, but it's amazing how dense the verbiage is in those old comics.
Yeah, it's completely different. Completely different. Let me just get to a couple of comments. So Tim Jones says, thanks anytime, I'm cheap. I know. And Dylan says, do you know Michael Cook, who created the voice of the rooster? I do know Michael Cook very well. He is a friend of mine. He is nice. He has the animation Chucky Chicken. You can find him on YouTube. I don't have the address right now. It might be youtube.com/Chucky Chicken. It's great, wholesome animation that gives a throwback to the 30s and 40s of animation with a modern spin on it. So,
nice.
I'm sorry, I keep promoting everybody. I've had so many people on the show. I love promoting everybody I can. But I want to get to your comic, The Next Door Neighbors. Now there is, where is it here? Do you have a website for The Next Door Neighbors, or is it just the
Go Comics?
It's just the Go Comics.
GoComics.com.
Yeah.
And check Norm out.
Okay, so let's
5 days a week, Monday through Friday.
Nice. So that gets you out of doing Sundays.
Well, lately I actually have been running pseudo ads for the book, and I run a strip that is actually in the book, right? Okay. And it's that's worked out in terms of a promotional type of thing. So I'm sort of branching out, I guess, into a sixth day, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's Go Comics right there.
Yes, Go Comics. So if you go on to Go Comics and type in Next Door Neighbors at the top, or go, where is it? Let me go on my screen.
One or the other.
So you can go to Find Comics, I believe, right, and go Trending, Political, Web, all categories, or A to Z. So you can go to the A to Z. And then scroll through. A lot of great strips on here. I'll be honest. Sometimes I wait a full week until I go on here, and then I can just read a week's worth of strips. And there's some weeks I'm on it daily, and just read through a bunch.
It's an amazing portal. I think 10 years ago it was probably in a fairly embryonic stage. I think they had something called Sherpa.
It ended right as I was getting ready to start posting on there.
They really. What's amazing about it? There's about, I could be wrong here, but there's a good 400 to 500 strips on there. I'll say 4.
Let's take a look real quick, and then we'll come right back.
Is there a number? Yeah. Let's see how many are on there.
Open a new tab, and we'll just go to the new tab here.
And I won't. Astonishing. It really is.
Yeah. They got a lot of good stuff on here. I'm a big BC fan. I read that regularly. I'm trying to think what else they have here that I would go to. I love the art in the Born Loser, the simplicity of it. It's just a nice.
Oh, Chip's
nice.
work is amazing. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'll plug some of my own favorites over there. I mean,
Yeah.
Wallace Brave started over, I think, on Go Comics as well, and then branched
Oh,
out.
that is a great. I love that.
Oh my God. Amanda the Great. I have to give it up for Amanda L. Dweek. I mean, that's a fabulous strip. Read it every day. You know, there's a lot of strips out on the internet. I got to say, in many ways, you know, for all the talk about the newspapers heading south, it's kind of a golden age. I mean, there's so much opportunity for expression, and you see it on this site constantly.
Yeah.
There's Gary McKee's another one, does batch rejection. There's quite a few of them. I know Jeff Grogan, he does this thing called Green Screen Comics. He does a real nice thing. He's not over there, but he does his own website and all that. He does his own podcast, Blackhead. So,
oh, nice. I'll have to check that out.
Really good stuff. Yeah, really amazing stuff. I'm a big fan of the Pet Peeve strip from Pete Chianca and Dave London. Really, that's good stuff out there, man. There really is.
Yeah, I'm a bit. I'll say I'm a big Heathcliff fan.
Heathcliff.
It's it's always that debate. Do you like Heathcliff or Garfield? I love them both, but I always kind of leaned more towards Heathcliff.
Well, he's been around a while, as they say.
Yeah.
You know? Different, and it's a strip, because it's a panel as well. I think it's structurally and tonally different than Garfield.
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh, Miss Peach, I haven't read that in a while.
There's just a ton of strips on there.
Yeah.
And it's really, when you first get involved in a situation like that, I have to say it's a little bit daunting because you got to be seen. And I mean, in the world of social media and the world of sharing and all this kind of nonsense, you have to, leave a mark. And I will tell you that it's probably not as easy as one would think. I think that's one of the learning curves of online presence. And I'm terrible, absolutely horrific at self-promotion. Terrible at it. So
it's funny. I helped develop, and I taught a college class for a couple of years. I don't even know how many, 3 years maybe, on social media marketing for artists. And I do almost less than a quarter of what I tell people to do.
It's very tough to do, and I think a lot of it is for something to go viral. I mean, is really knows why something goes viral. But it's not, being on Go Comics, I think, I'd taken this as my third crack at it, I think.
Yeah.
And they took me up on it the third time. So
Tim said, well, I don't know what's going on, if it's my computer or yours, but there we go. Oh, hopefully Tim's saying hopefully get on Go Comics one day. I'm sure you will. Your stuff is great, Tim. So, and then we got Heathcliff. Yeah. I literally got, I don't know, those little pocket books. I think I have 13 Heathcliff books. only one's a double. Yeah, those were
classic things, the Dennis the Menace and all that kind of thing. Love that stuff.
Yeah, it's they started republishing like pocket books with Peanuts. I don't know if you've seen those.
Right.
I picked up
they even looked like they were from the 60s,
Yeah. And I'm like, man, I wish they would do this with more. I used to love these. They're easy to carry around, throw in a bag. They're not heavy. They don't weigh it down.
Yeah.
James says, what is he? Let's see. Mike says he tried getting on, no luck. I'm sure you can do it too, Mike.
You just keep knocking at the door. Instagram's a great place.
I think for most artists, Instagram is the place. You got to know where your audience is and who your audience is. I've been recently. I haven't done it in a few weeks, but I've been recently posting on TikTok because, I'll do something in Procreate, and Procreate will record your drawings, and then I export the little video, and I've just been posting that on there just to kind of try to reach a different audience with it. It's been, I don't know.
I started, I think it was in 2018. I'm pretty sure 2018 that I started to reformat Neighbors for Instagram, right? So it's a little bit of extra work and stuff, but I would do the strip, I'd load it, it'd be on Go Comics, and then I would reformat it for Instagram. I was trying to put it on Instagram at one time, just as a horizontal strip. And again, the platform really is not very forgiving in that regard.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I started to reformat them the way they should be for Instagram. And really, I gotta say, I really like the form of it, the square format and the 4 panels and all that. So that's how that book, I ended up using that format for the book and went with sort of a best of type of thing.
And you're talking about this book. Whoops, wrong link. This book right here.
Indeed. And that one I chose to go with that standard 6x9 format, but it was a lot more forgiving if you went to that format and went with the sort of Instagram layout.
Yeah.
And I hashed around for a long time as to whether I wanted to go archival and just start the book from day one. And I didn't think anybody wanted to really see the strip getting its legs, so to speak. So I just kind of went with what I thought, what I was curating is my favorite stuff or whatever. But there are times where I'm kind of thinking about maybe doing a bigger series, like a hardbound book or something like that, with the entire thing. But I am planning a second one of this one that's going to be real similar in format and stuff. I had a lot of fun getting this one done. So
yeah, no, this looks great.
I had a guy who worked on it, John Cardinal, fantastic graphic designer, did a really nice job helping me with this because I needed it. I'm not the most savvy technical guy, so it helped out.
Yeah, I mean, it's and hold on, I want to get to your strip real quick, which we're gonna talk about in a moment. I just want to go to the comments here that James says the swiping feature on Instagram is lovely for the strip, which is why when I don't, I've mentioned it here before, and I was telling you when I did my strip The Wiz that I did in 2019 for about 8-9 months before I had to stop because I got sick. When my originally was a test, can I do a comic on the iPad? And I used different apps, I tried different things, whatever. But I knew going ahead with it I was building it specifically for Instagram. Yeah, so okay. when I built my templates, it was for swiping. So those things I was building for, that I'm gonna eventually put up on Gumroad probably within the next few weeks. Those are actually set up perfectly, whether you're doing a 3-panel or 4-panel for Instagram to cut them up nicely. And
it's interesting. They mentioned the swipe feature. I like the 4-panel thing. It's very static, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily use it. For some reason, the 4-panel format complements how I personally write. I can't explain it any better than that. But the cool thing is that Instagram, you can do the static thing with 4 panels and all that, but the swipe thing, I do use that. It's a little bit more, for me it is, the way I construct things. It's a little bit more complex in that, you have to cut it up and you have to have all these separate panels and load them up and all this kind of business. But I use it for effect. So if the strip is something that has some unusual payoff in the last panel, the swipe thing is gold, man. And it really is. Boom, 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 and holy, there it is.
Yeah, no, it works out. It works out great. I love it. So let's talk about the strip because we're already 49 minutes into the show and we haven't really touched upon Next Door Neighbors. And it's okay. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. Okay. But let's talk about how you came up with the strip. Tell us about some of the characters and by the way, while you're doing that, do you have a favorite character that you like to either write, draw, or just you connect with?
It's probably Vera, Norm's mom.
Okay.
I mean, I use her quite a bit, but I don't know. I will tell you with the genesis of the strip, the way it worked out. I first pitched it as Next Door Neighbors about 20 years ago and got a lot of nice answers and stuff from the syndicates, more rejections, and had to somehow figure out how to refine the thing. Took a second shot at it. I think I was even involved. There was an Amazon cartoonist contest, I believe, for Universal where I had put it in there as well. And it didn't get any further than that. And I kept wanting to retool it. And finally, I was convinced to do so. And I presented it as you see it now. And the characters have changed a little bit. but the genesis of the strip is still fairly intact. Norm is essentially, in my vernacular, that guy. And I always kind of designed him as that guy. And everybody always says, well, you know, did you have a neighbor and all that kind of, well, not really. But we've all known Norm. We all know a Norm. I'm probably a Norm. Okay. Yeah, I kind of lean to probably Ludman, the neighbor, but I'm probably a Norm as well. And so that guy, I think Norm has always had this sort of devil may care, I don't care attitude, which I think a lot of us just want to say, you know, and that's Norm as well.
Yeah.
But the strip, you know, when I put it together, you never, what's really tough when you're developing any kind of a property is trying to see it 2 and 3 and 4 years out. What will this strip become? Because it's real easy to say, you know, your archetypes are a slovenly guy and his mom who likes cats and all that kind of business. But, you know, where do you go with it? I mean, it's really tough to envision what something could be like. And here I am. Let's say I've been doing this 6 years and I'm surprised every day because I don't see myself as anything other than a guy that struggles to get it done, you know, as often as possible. And there it is. I'm still managing to find very interesting stories. And one of them tends to be Vera. I find more stories with her.
Yeah.
Where she'll have parties with the cats or whatever. Some of the more epic stories are Norm, though, with the fireworks and, you know, that kind of thing. So it's been pretty fun. So it's, you know, the writing of it is very rewarding and also rewarding that you could relax and work on a singular strip because for years you're always schlepping some new strip. I had probably a dozen strips I pushed before then.
Yeah.
As anybody who's tried this knows how that goes, you know.
Absolutely.
And they were all a resounding no.
Yeah.
So yeah, Next Door Neighbors, somehow I managed to get it to stick finally. So.
And it's great. And we talked about your style with the looseness already, which I'm not going to go into again. But I'm just looking at what you're doing here, and I just love the simplicity of it. It's just I don't know. It works. I mean,
it works
so
for
well.
me.
No, but it works so well.
Yeah, I'm not a draftsman by any stretch, but what I get, I like to think I get the information down that's necessary to get the ag across. And a lot of times too, you know, it's funny because I don't really, you know, people say to me, what's with the no eyes thing? You know, I don't really draw eyes very much. It's just a line. Yeah. But there's a certain, even as loose as the strip is and is almost expressionistic as I think I'm drawing it, there's still something to the movement of a line that can impart an emotion that you have to pay attention when you're drawing it. So sometimes, I mean, I've sat there and we kind of hinted at this earlier, but something that no other human on the face of the earth would notice, but I'm noticing, I'll redraw it like 16 times just to make it right.
Yeah.
And suddenly that looseness starts to disappear a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but I appreciate the compliment on the looseness because it's what I know, I suppose.
Yeah. No, but like I said, it just works. It makes, I can't picture this as a strip with, if you want to use the word tight art on there, like looking at a Beetle Bailey type of cleanliness. It just, the humor wouldn't even work.
I should try that sometime and roll out some parody type thing with this.
Go for it, man.
If you look like, you know. Yeah, no, I guess the term would be expressionistic, I suppose. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it's just what I do, I suppose.
No, dude,
the syndicates talk about a voice. I'm sure you've heard this phrasing before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think oftentimes this is just my theory, but I think oftentimes it gets interpreted as a writing style. You know, they'll say, what's your voice, right?
Yeah.
And this is strictly my theory, but to me, a voice is that combination of the art, the writing, the editing, the presentation, the whole thing. That's the voice. Yeah. And I have absolutely no understanding how that happens. I think it happens through repetition. You have to do it over and over, and you have to really deep dive these characters to kind of get a feel for them and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, this. And how long has this been running for again? I forgot.
Started in 2016.
So
and it's interesting when I started it was 3 days a week, and I quickly abandon that. I realized I couldn't. You know, the problem is I like to write in arcs. I love story arcs and themes and all this kind of thing. And it's really hard if you're doing something less than a daily strip or 5 days a week or whatever it is. A story arc will end up taking 7 months to do something that would have just taken, 3 weeks or whatever it might be. So I realized real early on, I think in the fall of 16, I just shifted over to 4-panel and accepted it and just kind of rolled with it. And sometimes I wish it was like 1 or 2-panel. Every so often I'll do something that's broken down like that, but for the most part, 4-panel.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's a fantastic strip. I every time you post, like I said, I go to Go Comics once a week, and if I don't see your posts on like Instagram, I will read it on here. But I tend to see your stuff more on Instagram and read it there.
I enjoy putting it up there. I think again, everybody gripes about it. I think the algorithm there is a little tough to handle. So I don't bother with that anymore. I try not to. I think you can make yourself pretty crazy if you get worried about reach in the world of social media.
Yeah.
And I wish it had more reach, but it is what it is.
It's
just scrolling away there. Which one is that?
Sorry, I didn't read this strip. I was just reading the comment real quick.
Okay.
Sorry. It was.
Yeah.
But yeah, this. I just love looking at it.
Oh, thank you. Well, now this is again Vera, and I tend to use her quite a bit. I've had a number of episodes. One of them ended up in the book. She did a cruise, went on a cruise, and Norm and the kids had to watch the cats. And as I was developing that arc, it got longer and longer. And it went on. Oh my God, I think that was a 2-month story arc. It really blew my mind when I finally finished it. And it all appeared, and months later, I was looking back on it and reading, and I thought, "Wow, that went long." I enjoyed it. It's just one of those things. There's a rhythm. There's a rhythm to writing that maybe isn't necessarily a gag, but just conversation. And conversation, in my opinion, is very difficult to bottle as you write it. I don't know if that makes any sense. I thought Trudeau was incredible at it, and I thought Schultz was incredible at it, but the ability to write in a conversational tone is hard for me.
Yeah.
I would say for me. And so I spend a lot of time with it. And sometimes, I talk about these field notes, steno pads and all that. I'll sit there and take a phrase and run it over and over again with different words or verbs or whatever it might be, just to see what it sounds like. And it's pretty frustrating.
No, listen, I get it, because when I'm doing my comics, and it doesn't matter if I'm doing a comic page, comic strip, whatever it is, I am editing my words until until I'm ready to send it to whoever I need to send it to, or print it or whatever. It's as long as I'm not following a script and I'm the writer, I'm constantly editing the text and what they're saying. I until the very last minute.
I have scripts that are a year old that were already published, everything, and I want to go back and add words and kind of fix it and all that. It's just, I don't know. It's the curse, I suppose.
It's funny to look at, though, because number one, you're saying you want to add words, but I remember, I don't remember what teacher told me this, because I studied under Richard Rockwell, and I studied under Tom Gill. And one of them, I forget which one, told me, they said, try to keep your words to no more than, I think it was 20 words. Was it per panel, I think they said?
Wow.
Or was it 20 words per strip? I don't remember. I think it was 20 words per panel. And I've always kind of worked by that guideline here. Like,
Well, brevity being what it is. I mean, I think that's sort of an axiom to begin with. But to edit down, I won't even say a gag, but to edit something that, and again, this is just me speaking from my vernacular, is to edit something down in a conversational tone is really frustrating sometimes, because you want it to sound, I want it to sound as if you're overhearing a conversation in a way. And that's easier said than done for me. So that might be why the art has an expressionistic quality, because I'm in a hurry to finish it. You know,
I actually want to talk
I gotta get this done.
about your art, but I want to get to got a comment from Buck Jones. So enjoying learning more about Pat. Thanks for doing thanks for this, Michael. You're very welcome. I'm loving this. I mean, we're an hour in. We'll probably go maybe about another half hour, but
I told you I tend to go long, man.
It's okay, but I could totally bring you back and we can just talk about other stuff, whatever. But one of the things that I noticed, and I don't know if you do this just naturally with your work, as I'm looking at your strip, I don't see a lot of, actually this one does it a little bit, but I don't see a lot of moving of the camera, you know, of the no zooming in. Like here you kind of came in, but you had to do that for the lettering, you know.
Exactly, yeah. And I think I'm not, this isn't to be self-deprecating. I'm not really, I'm a graphic designer by trade, so everything is very real tight and all this kind of thing. And I think that must manifest itself in the strip. So I've never, I think if I did some type of a 3/4 view shot of a city scene and all that, I think it would really throw the whole rhythm of the strip off. Or it has, I'm a big Jules Pfeiffer guy, I'll say that.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, same type of thing. So yeah, I think it's from the era that I grew up in. I think, again, Doonesbury was a massive influence, and he didn't really start breaking that static plane until probably the mid 80s and stuff, you know. So maybe I'll get to it eventually.
No, 'cause I was gonna say, like, when I draw, and I'm talking comic strips, not comic books, because the comic books are a different thing. But when I draw strips, I almost look at it as I'm watching a stage play from the audience. So I look at it as I'm sitting there in the audience. This is my point of view from my seat. Right. So I tend to only, zoom in or cut scenes when it's necessary for the rest of the time. I try to draw everything the same, like how you have, because I feel like you're saying, if you're overhearing conversation, or for me, I'm watching a stage play, I wouldn't see it from another angle. It wouldn't make sense to me.
I just, and that makes a lot of sense too, because it just, there's something to be said for all these, for multiple angles and all that. And I think it's just, I simply have spent so much time going with this static route that it does surprise me sometimes. But I do feel that if I started moving in that direction, suddenly now you're going off brand a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things.
It's part of the voice that you were talking about earlier.
Well, that's a good point too. I think that, I don't want to say you learn to stick with what got you to the dance, to coin an old fashioned phrase, but it's probably something like that. I can imagine if I did another, developed another strip, it'd probably have a different visual voice to it, but this one has been so codified in my style that I tend to just simply go for it. So when I'm inking, I got to tell you, I mean, my originals are clean as a whistle because there's no pencil on them. I take my rough, put it on the light board. So the originals are super, super clean, and it's just the ink work and all that. And, and I kind of pride myself on the lettering and all. So I don't think, what I'd love to be able to do is eventually get a font together.
So you hand letter all this?
All of it, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's old school, man. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all great.
Yeah.
I just want to go to one of the comments real quick. Where's my mouse? Here it is. So James had to go. He gets his connection keeps kicking him off, but says, "Thank you both. I'll be watching the replay. Great strip, Mr. Sandy." So
thank you very much.
Just great stuff. So when you ink, let me just, since you are inking traditionally, and I don't meet a lot of traditional inkers these days on my show.
I'm sure.
You said you ink in micron. Is there a certain number, or you just pick based on how you feel with the strip?
An 8.
An 8? Okay.
An 8.
Everything's the 8.
Everything's an 8. There's a bullet tip for blacks, and then I use the number 12 for borders. I mean, it's real simple.
Okay. No, I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, it really is. And so my learning curve is going to be to translate that once I start taking this thing digital and getting something I used a term with Dave London one time where I was talking about the standardization, just getting like, that's the line that I'll go to that pen tool, I'll go to this one, I'll have the borders already in the, the computer and stuff like that. So I'm looking for
that's
and a font.
Yeah, but that's why I created the template, and everything was to kind of help me out. And after playing, I was one of those guys. I bought tons of brushes. I didn't spend a lot of money, but I bought different brushes for Photoshop, for Clip Studio Paint, for Procreate, whatever it is. And when I'm in there, I know.
You know exactly where to go.
I know if I'm in Photoshop, these are the pens I want. If I'm in Procreate, this is what I want to use.
I've screwed around with Procreate enough to know, like, if you like the expressionistic look of these characters and the ink work, I can replicate that, obviously. I mean, I go into Procreate, I go, oh, that looks pretty cool.
I forget what the name of my iPad's in the other room, but I forget the name of it. But there is like a standard kind of micron-ish pen in Procreate, and it works out great.
Part of it, I think, too, is I have this obsession with having originals, which is pathetic. I will throw myself on the jury here. I have way too many of them. And it used to be real cute and everything, having a stack of originals, but it's not cute anymore. There's too many of them.
You run out of room. I mean, listen, my studio isn't a large space, and it's one of the reasons I went digital because the business, it's easier. I can send emails, I could do stuff, edit easier. Also, because of my medication, my hand isn't perfectly steady, so I have trouble inking. So that undo button is like key to everything for me.
Yeah, you don't undo with a micron pen.
Yeah, no, you curse a lot with a micron pen. I just did that the other day. I drew a picture, one of my old characters, and I kind of just loosely sketched in a background. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. And then I realized I put a cloud in the wrong spot. Now it's in front of a building I drew. And I was like, son of a...
So again, with the strip, I mean, I have restarted numerous strips because I did something I didn't dig and I didn't want to fix it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of sad because I have, I mean, I'm about as trendy as the Amish in a way when it comes to this stuff. And I really am. And the funny thing is in all my years in the greeting card business, it was all digital. I used it was a Wacom pad, and I worked on a screen, and I just worked that way and was really used to it. So oh my God, the last 20 years that I was in that business, I didn't do any scanning. But for some reason with the strip, I treat it very, for want of a better word, traditional. Yeah. And I like to draw it traditionally, but those days are ending because I really, I'll take it over to Cintiq. So. Stay in Photoshop more than likely,
Yeah, a Photoshop you can do everything, and it's awesome.
I've
been using Photoshop since 1995, so for me, it's kind of like it's almost like second nature to me. I just open the program and I know what's going on. But we do have a comment about the strip. What are the characters' names?
Oh, characters' names.
You said some, but not everyone.
Yeah, well, you got Norm Dewey, obviously. His wife is Jan. The kids are Claire and Jake. And Vera is named after my grandmother. And probably, I always say this loosely. She's very loosely based on my mom, who was also a bit of a cat lady back in the day and a smoker. And so there's a little bit of a wink on Vera. You got Deke, the bartender, Herb Ludman next door. His wife is Sylvia. It's interesting. People get confused between Sylvia and Jan. And Jan has this sort of brown hair to flip, and Sylvia has sort of a redheaded bouffant type of thing. There they are. Yeah. And so those are the names for the most part. I think there might have been a few others in there, but those are the main characters.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I don't think I put the link to this book in here. I know I put a link to the Go Comics. Let's put a link to the book here. This is the right screen I need to be on. So in the comments, if you want to purchase this book, you can just head over to Amazon. And it's still posting, guys. I think it went to YouTube or...
Yeah, and you can DM me over at, either over at the Facebook neighbors or over at Instagram, and I will do signed copies, so.
We got James. I love your cat story, but on basis, I also do a strip called Cat and Kid.
Oh, Cat and Kid. Very.
I enjoy Cat and Kid.
James, yes.
Yeah.
I see that all the time over at Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, we just connected, I believe, recently, and
it's a great strip.
I haven't had a chance to sit down and focus and just go through all the stuff, but the few that I've caught, I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's beautifully done. I'll say this: I've had I know I talked about this with Jeff Grogan at one time about the, Vera. There's a lot of cat strips out there, right? So I kind of try to make sure I stay out of other people's lanes in terms of the, different personalities of cats and all that. The cats have never really been too heavily personified in the strip, and not really for a specific reason, but that I'm so enamored of working Vera, the character. So she tends to dominate the cat stories rather than the cats dominating the Vera stories. So it's kind of an interesting approach to it.
And it's
Kid is great though.
I was loving this one. This is
the phone call.
Being the Disney fan, this is a great one here.
Disney.
It ain't Disney World.
Yeah, it's really funny because I don't know about everybody here, but I get these calls endlessly, and I started riffing off of this a couple of years ago. And because I work in themes, I always will do for the most part, I'll do 5 of them in a given week. And there's no lack of material there. There really isn't.
Yeah.
These people just are endless, and I've gotten every variation of it. It's amazing. I had one, the one that really gets under my skin is the local ones with the Fraternal Order of Police thing. And I've done a couple of sequences where I think it's Jan, where they start pushing back on the guy and negotiating what they want to get for their $25 donation. And I don't know. I just have a real thing for that theme, and I have to keep away from it sometimes because it's too easy to go around that all the time. But another one that I tend to lean on a little bit is National Days. I like doing that too. So there's always a day,
Oh yeah. When I work with little kids, I look up specifically what that day is that I'm going in. Oh, it's National Pretzel Day. Let's learn to draw a pretzel vendor and holding pretzels or something, And
right. No, it's that strip is from Vera's big cruise in 2018. That was the 2-month storyline, and had a lot of fun with that one. There's just some arcs that stick with you, and that was one of my favorite arcs. So
that's a great.
I tend to get precious about your work a little. I mean, that's how I am. There's some storylines that I swear to God, I'll read this book and I'll just thumb through it and think, oh, that was funny. And I'm like, you shouldn't laugh at your own stuff, but I tend to sometimes.
But the goal is to make you laugh. If you can make yourself laugh, you're doing good. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes my wife Joyce will hear me, chuckling away or something. What are you laughing at? But I mean, I'm laughing. Sometimes there will be a turn of a phrase or a I don't know what to call it, a retort or something that works just beautifully, and I get all happy with that because that solves a lot of stuff. So
that's fun. That's funny that your wife lasted, because my wife, she says she hears me talking to myself and I don't realize I'm doing it. I honestly think I'm having a conversation with my characters, like they're working out a scene or something.
Well, she sees everything too, though. I mean, it's kind of like I've done written some stuff that actually was pretty clunky, and I'll get caught on it, and I'll go, "Oh, you're right." Start, it's like having like an editor, so I'll fix it. Yeah,
that's what I do. I show stuff to my wife, and she, especially with colors, because I'm colorblind. I see.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, I'm. The term is actually shade blindness. I see colors, but when they blend, I have trouble telling them apart. So it's not like I'm a red and green, whatever it is, but it's all colors for me.
Wow. Okay.
So so I'll ask her, I'm like, how does that yellow look? Yo, you got a green there. Crap. It's things like that. But I'll ask her to go over the strip, and I'm like, I'll ask her. I'm like, I don't hear you laughing. She goes, oh, it was okay. Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah. Well, I look at the one you have up on the screen here, but I mean, we talk about Procreate and all that, and sometimes I wonder if I would be almost too dangerous for my own good if suddenly I'm getting into the high tech you know, the real technique-y stuff. Because I mean, I'm looking at that strip. There's a cloud in the background. She's on a ship's bow or whatever it is, and you know, relaxing. And you could gussy that up,
Yeah.
50 different ways if you wanted to, but then it probably wouldn't be the neighbors, you know. So
Yeah, no, but it like I said, it all works though. I mean, you know, I until you told me, because I'm going backwards, I didn't realize she was on a cruise ship at this point.
yeah.
You know, I'd have to remember because I'm going backwards, but I could see it now that you said it. You know, it's
Well, I'm all up. You know, this is probably from the years I was working in magazine cartoons. I mean, most of those guys. I mean, I know Bob Boyko was like this. You put in just enough to get it across. That's it. So if you need an executive at a desk and there's a nameplate on the desk, that's it. Don't screw around, right? So you deal
yeah.
with staging on a minimalist level, and that's kind of how I approach it here. So.
Yeah. We got a comment here going back to strip length. I don't know how to say the last name. I'm so sorry. Is it Ramusin? I'm terrible. Rasmussen, sorry. Had a character under the underwear. He says, keep it short, keep it brief, and only cover what you need.
Well, you know, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You know, editing, and it does visual editing as well as writing editing. And it's extremely hard because you're muscling yourself into brevity in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's it really, sometimes the misuse of one word can screw the whole gag up. I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but and you can see it and you don't know why it's screwing it up. And then that's when it becomes real headachy, because you're kind of drilling into it and looking up the thesaurus and looking up, you know, verbs or whatever. And it's very frustrating. But I tend to be a perfectionist, and that's a bad trait to have. It really is sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think as an artist, we all want our work to be perfect, but we gotta know when to stop and say it's not going to be perfect, but it's good enough that.
Well, good enough is a mantra.
Yeah, it's that you know that it works. We got to comment.
Way too close to it. That's the problem. We get too close to it. So.
Well, that's the thing. We got, you know, and I'll be honest. I learned that through going out in the professional world and working as a graphic designer and actually working, you know, in animation or whatever. It was, you know, I had people telling me, you need to, you know, you're working on it too long.
Oh, sure.
I need to get to that point where it's okay, stop. And when I got to that point to learn where to stop, at least in graphic design, I was working like crazy because I was I was a lot faster as an artist.
I've been around art directors though that will fix something forever.
Yeah.
You know, can you take this and change that pink? Yeah. You know, now can you make it purple? Yeah, I'll make it. So.
Joe Ryan says, I'm learning so much tonight, guys. Well, I'm glad you are. And,
I hope.
And well, Joe Ryan, he's a Kubert School graduate that I know, and
nice.
He's got his own comic coming out hopefully soon, and he's always eager to learn more and more about, you know, the cartooning world.
Well, that's flattering anyway. I'm always surprised when anybody, if anything I say can help anybody, that's an awesome thing. Because the people that I've mentioned when I was growing up and stuff, or even as an adult, you know, oftentimes if it's just a singular incident, you'll learn something. And I've always been real appreciative of that. I have so many people that I can, God almighty, if I started saying thank you, it would take 5 days.
Yeah. No, I know the feeling.
Oh yeah.
I'm, you know, and it's funny, just speaking of learning, you know, I always feel as an artist, you're always learning, you're always taking in. And even if I didn't have them as official teachers, like I said, I studied under Tom Gill, I studied under Richard Rockwell. But like, you know, all the strips we look at growing up, whether it's, you know, Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, whatever it was for you, you know, I feel though they were my teachers too, you know, you know, like you were learning rhythm by writing down the Johnny Carson show. I was learning that through reading strips constantly, you know?
Yeah. And I had no idea, but when you're doing it, in the thick of it, and let's say you're a young kid or whatever.
Yeah.
I just thought, and I realized, like I said, they weren't that funny when I reread them, but at the time, the whole mannerism thing, which is an equator to visual. I mean, the mannerisms that Johnny would use or Joey Bishop or whoever, there's a similarity in it. It's analogous the comic strip and the visual direction and movement and rhythm of it.
Yeah.
And that stuff really stuck with me, but I didn't really think about it for a long, long time. I just realized it over the years, certainly looking back at that book.
Well, I think that's how it is for most of us. I actually had a time in my life before I went into teaching. I studied stand-up comedy. I actually took classes on stand-up comedy. And when I learned I'm sitting in the classroom, I remember learning this is a formula to write a joke. And I'm like, wait a second. This is basically what I did when I was learning to write comics by studying comics. It's introduce, setup, and punchline. And it's the same thing. And I'm like, wow. So even though I never performed because at the time I was too shy to get up on stage.
Oh, it's got to be tough to do.
And then I became a teacher, and now I can get up and just talk to a room full of
well,
whatever.
You look at a bit by I'll use my favorite, George Carlin, right? And you look at one of his classic bits. I won't even go into how many there are, but it's very similar to storyboarding. That people tend to not realize that just about everything they see in media has been storyboarded to some extent. It's all figured out and all that kind of thing. And Carlin, for example, he can't be the only one, but a lot of his bits might be all written out on paper, but it is, once again, it's how he sells it.
Yeah.
As a comedian, and it's the vocal inflection, it's his facial expressions, that type of stuff that really sell it. So I do think stuff like that is very analogous to the visual direction of the comic strip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. We're getting close to having to wrap up. So I just want to go check out comments real quick if there's anything I missed. We got a love Vera.
Thank you very much.
Saying that. Who is this? Dylan.
Comments on the smokes every so often, by the way, James. So
actually, that is a question I wanted to ask you about the smoking. I hear a lot of people are like anti that in comics now and on TV because because of kids and stuff. But you get away with it.
Well, I'm not selling a kid strip here. I will say that.
No, I understand that, but
it shuts doors for me.
What?
In a way, it shuts doors in a way. I mean, this isn't. I can't. I can't go into a grade school and show them Vera, banging.
Exactly.
Right. Vera's character is an archetype of that wise cracking old lady thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's a trope. And the smoke, I started from day one. She showed up in the strip in I think it was like December of 16, already hitting the sticks and all this, and the cats are everywhere and everything. And the smoke stuck, and I kept using it. And most people, I mean, it just got to be sort of a running gag. Oh, there she, the cats must stink and all this. And I even worked that into strips and stuff. But in the last year, the problem is it's a prop that starts to become unnecessary. Just constantly having this cigarette. So lately, like in the last 6-7 months, I'll just do a strip with her not having a cigarette, right? And somebody said something. They get on there and they said, "Hey, how come she's suddenly not smoking?" And I said, "Well, I'm just lazy, Yeah.
Well, I saw a strip actually tonight where I forget where it was. Yeah. But she wasn't smoking, but there was her cigarette was in an ashtray.
Oh, that was she was doing her own little podcast thing.
Yeah.
And the cigarette was kind of just sitting there as if she had been smoking it and just kind of banged into the strip or whatever. So I'm starting to kind of be a little bit, I don't know if it's like public service or whatever, but it's like, I'll give you an example. This week, I think it was yesterday, actually, the thing about the cat with the mice kebabs, right?
Yes.
And with smoke, this is a really good example of when I don't use it. I'd already drawn the strip and there was smoke. As you saw, there was smoke from the left to imply that there's a barbecue going on, right?
Yeah.
And the cat's off screen, which is the thing I like to do a lot, is where I like to structure the writing without showing it. I like the reader to finish the equation visually in their head, if I may be bold, right? So there's a smoke coming off the left side of each panel to imply that there's a full barbecue going on. And the first time I drew it out, and it's been a couple of weeks, but she's got the cigarette in her hand and the smoke coming up from the cigarette, which was battling, there you go, which was battling with the smoke from the left part of the panel. And I thought, man, I don't know. So I just ditched it. So there you go. It's kind of like visual editing as you go. So
this was a great strip. I loved it. I laughed. I
worried about mice kebabs, and I've used the line before in the strip a while back, and I kept thinking, God, does that sound gross? But whatever. It's very Tom and Jerry. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, no, it works. It was. Yeah. I love that he's got like oven mitts on, and
what I like. I'm a big fan of deadpan. That's one of my favorite writing styles, and I think this strip does it a lot. And it's a big fourth panel deadpan comment type of thing. And I like the fact that sometimes she's just an observer with all these cats in the house. And I lost count. People used to ask, how many cats does she have? And I say 30 plus maybe, just to be ridiculous about it. And I've played that number a few times. So, but
it's
But the cigarettes has come up a bit lately. A few people have asked. I don't know.
Let's see. We got a comment from Amanda. I love how Pat draws
Amanda.
I do too. It reminds me of someone, and I can't place who it is.
Somebody read Amanda's strip though. You got that's.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Her strip.
Amanda the Great. I'm going to do the plug for Amanda.
Go for it.
Yeah, you got Amanda the Great. It's on Go Comics as well. Go Comics.
Yeah, we gotta. I gotta get you on too, Amanda. I've
7 days a week.
Oh, 7. I have to go back and look, but you go to A to Z, and it's under A.
Awesome.
Right?
No, so you talk about the cats. I don't know. I can't draw cats. That's my problem.
You know who it reminds me of now that I'm looking at it?
Yeah.
Kind of like Ziggy as a cat.
Ziggy. Well, we were around. My God, I mean, at American Grading, Ziggy was the man. And just around.
Yeah.
But that's how I when I did the cards and stuff. A lot of times the cats. I mean, this is fairly evolved, really, from what I used to do the greeting cards. But I mean, the cat usually had a round head and all that kind of thing. So really simplistic. I know a lot of times people in years past they thought the nose was like the mouth or something, and now that I mentioned it, nobody will unsee that. But you draw, that's what it is. But you draw a certain way, and you can't not do that. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like that's just how I do cats. Yeah. And they don't look like cats at all. I'll admit it. I mean, they just, they're little round whatevers. But and this particular cat here is the only one. There's been several cats that I've mentioned by name, but he's the only one that's risen above the anonymity of the situation. So that's Oscar. And he tends to do a lot of the anthropomorphic stuff. Yeah. But back to Amanda. Read the strip. Hi, Amanda.
Yeah, no, it's a great strip.
Mm-hmm.
No, awesome stuff here. So anyway, we should wrap up only because of the time. We're like an hour and a half in. And
the parole officer will be calling soon. So.
So she says, "Whoops, what I come up with here? Is that Betty Illustrator?
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Pat. And I think I put it up before, but I saw Dylan. I just wanted to wish him luck. He says creating a show called The Toonies, so good luck with that.
Awesome. Definitely good luck.
Yeah. But yeah, listen, I don't think we even really scratched the surface on things we could talk about here.
Well, yeah, like I said, I could go on, but I do go on. Yes.
Yeah. And we got Joe Ryan says, enjoyed this comics chat.
Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And I gotta say, I love talking with all types of cartoonists and stuff, but like strip artists are sometimes my favorite people to talk to because you guys have a way of looking at the world where you're gonna, you have to put out daily, kind of, and even though you work kind of weeks in advance, you're still there popping it out, where like when I'm doing a comic book, I have months to draw and focus, and so it's a whole different mindset of drawing, and the way you guys approach art is just so.
I'd like to look at strips as bodies of work. That's how I end up looking at them. And I don't look at them. It's kind of a weird mindset, but I don't look at them as like a daily dose, which is exactly what they really are. It's a daily hit, you know. I'm, as everybody here probably is, a big fan of collections and anthologies and that kind of thing. So I love digesting comics in big chunks of content.
Same
so
here.
I had a ball when I was putting this book together. I mean, my goal, and hopefully it translates. I mean, I wanted people to get something. I wanted to create something that I really enjoyed reading. And I think at the end of the day, I kind of dig reading it, if I may my own horn, I guess.
Well, that's how when I write, I have to say, if it makes me laugh, then I did my job.
That's all that matters, really.
Because I hope people enjoy what I put out. You know, I hope people want to come regularly and read my stuff, but you know, as long as I'm putting out something that made me laugh and not something where I feel like, I just had to throw something together, I feel that's when my strips shine for me.
I could never, every strip I've ever developed, maybe one was a real soft type of humor, but I could never, I don't do endearing very well as character design. It's never been my strength, and I kind of gave up years ago trying to do cute. And I don't know any other way to say it. I don't do it well. So the kind of characters that I like, and this goes back to Norm Dewey, are characters that are actually repellent. I mean, I don't want to live next to Norm, you know? I mean, he's an idiot, right? But I always felt when I first developed this, and when I developed it the second and third time, I always liked the idea. Now, I'm not the first one to come to this, but I mean, I like the idea of a character that really nobody likes, but there's something to them that you can explore, right?
Yeah.
And they all have families, and they all have moms, and some of them have cats and all that kind of stuff. And suddenly this whole world view and this ecosystem comes into play. So I like anti-type characters and stuff.
Yeah, no, they're great.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny when I write, I tend to write, and I don't know if it's why, but I tend to write a little dark, a little, but my characters, like you were saying, you can't draw cute. I do cute very well.
There you go.
And it's like sometimes I feel they don't mix 100%, but sometimes it's perfect to have these cute little characters. I don't want to use the word being depressed, but just kind of looking at life a little darker than
right. But they come out, and we go back to the word voice again. They come out being you, being your style, and how you would approach it. And I think I think at the end of the day, any of us as a creative, if you can create something that is distinctively you in a world that really wants to morph everybody into something else all the time, that's something, because we're buffeted literally 24 hours a day by content. We really are. I mean, 30 and 40 years ago, if there was 5,000 cartoonists working that we even knew about, that would be a miracle. Now, I mean, there's 750 trillion of them in every direction, and you can't avoid it, right?
Yeah, totally.
So being yourself, I think, is probably the hardest lesson I learned, but it's the only lesson, really.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, that's a great thing to end on. Great, because we do need to wrap it up. So I want to thank you. If you can hang out backstage for a moment, I want to thank you for coming on. Really did have a great time. Definitely got to have you back, because there's so much more we could totally.
Like I said, I could do it anytime. You have a great show, Michael. You really do. And you guys, everybody that showed up was really great. It was really nice to hear from everybody. So
thank you. I appreciate that, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. I'm going to drop you backstage for a moment. Thank you. All right, guys. So that's tonight's show. I plan to be on next week, but there's a chance I may have to take another week off. I will let you guys know. Check out my Facebook, my Instagram, Twitter, all that for the ads, and check out what's going on. But I hope to be back Tuesday with another show for you. If it is, I got a great guy lined up, or a great set of guys. We'll see about that. And we'll talk soon. All right, you guys have a great weekend, great rest of your week, because we're in the beginning of the week anyway. So So anyway, yeah, you guys, I'm sorry. Comments are still popping up, and I want to thank everybody. Love that about her. It really suits her. So I don't remember what part we were talking about there, but Joe Ryan, I'll be tuning in. Thank you guys. Had a great time. We'll do it again soon.